Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about Mercury's upcoming square to Mars, which is in the middle of perfecting right now. This is a really interesting transit for a few reasons, so we're going to dive into it today. All right, so I'm going to put the real-time clock up on the screen where you can see it, and here we go. So the first thing that I want everybody to notice, I've taken the outer planets out for now. They're not really a part of today's conversation, just to keep the screen a little clearer. So you'll see Mercury in Pisces moving into the square with Mars in Gemini. I'm speaking on March 22nd, Monday, and watch what happens if we go forward a few days. So you go forward tomorrow, they're still a little less, about half a degree off by tomorrow. And if you go into Wednesday, March 24th, that's when the aspect will be have perfected and be starting to fade. You're going to see as this fades that all the way until Saturday, about a 3-degree range, Friday into Saturday, that this transit is in effect. There's also the matter of a full moon coming at the end of this week, beginning of next, and also cazimi between Venus and Mars by the end of the week. You might have heard me last week talk about how this week constitutes something of a breakthrough. I mentioned that the breakthrough might hit a few snags along the way, but that the breakthrough is coming by the end of this week into early next week. And that's also because Mars is about to break out of that containment from the nodes. You'll notice that all of the planets are contained on this side of the node. We talked about this particular configuration in Indian astrology. And the fact that Mars is about to break across the barrier of the North Node, it's been within the node since since COVID hit a little over a year ago. So it should be interesting to see what that looks like. A number of people, astrologers, are writing about this from the Indian yoga perspective of this configuration as a moment of energetic release. And I like that interpretation myself, based on the fact that we're also seeing we also just saw the Aries ingress point hitting a sextile to the great conjunction point between Jupiter and Saturn that happened. There's a number of different ways of looking at it, but I believe we are on the point of breaking through, maybe some with some pent up energy. You've seen that in nature too, like some of these volcanoes that have exploded. And we're in the midst of a Saturn-Uranus dynamic. And when you're in the midst of a Saturn-Uranus square, now I will pop in the outer planets just for a second. When you are in the midst of a Saturn-Uranus square, you're going to have a real push-pull dynamic in the year, where sometimes there's breakthroughs and sometimes there's these long periods of waiting for a breakthrough, or kind of almost like conservative or restrictive energy, and they go back and forth. We're right now, since the beginning of the year, the Saturn-Uranus square was really dominant. As it's starting to, it's backed off a little bit, and now the sun is configured to Aquarius, where Jupiter and Saturn are located. It's that spring energy, zodiacally speaking, the burst of light energy that we think of in the zodiac coming through right now. So this looks very good. Now, all of that is just a little bit of background or context, again, for what we're going to talk about today, which is Mercury square to Mars. And again, that's perfecting between now and, you could say, Thursday or Friday is the real intensity. But we'll say, for example, Wednesday is you could even go Tuesday night through Wednesday night as the peak period for this transit this week. All right, so what to expect from this transit? A number of things that come to mind. And you all have heard me use this analogy before, but let's imagine that Mars right now is in the temple of Mercury, the double-bodied, airy temple of Mercury, the sign of the twins. So in this temple of Gemini, Mars is a house guest. Mars is a worshiper from afar, visiting the temple of this other god. And when Mars is house guest of Hermes, then Hermes has to satisfy his guests. It's like if I go over to your house, the etiquette of the guest host relationship in most places of the world would mean, you might give me a drink of water, or make sure that I'm doing okay. And similarly, when Mars is in Gemini, Mercury is going to be the one checking up on it and saying, hey, what can I get you? What can I do for you? Well, what kinds of things does Mars want? Mars wants conflict. Mars wants action. And the action doesn't have to be bad or good. It's just Mars is the god of action in a sense. So action, warfare, conflict, aggression, courage, hostility, risk-taking activities, but not necessarily bad ones. Sometimes it could be, maybe not. So these terms can be very neutral. Mars, now when Mars is in Mercury's sign, and then Mercury has to then deliver, we get conflict of words because Mercury's serving dinner. So, okay, Mars, you want conflict? How about some words to chew on? So Mercury, Mars squares can result in outbursts of words or language or temper or usually verbal or mental outbursts or releases of pent-up energy that are more probably going to steer you toward conflict and not peace. So war of words and debate, argumentation, difficulty mentally, intellectually, and almost like verbally. I'll give you a simple example. I was teaching a class yesterday and I was drinking my glass of water, and in the middle of class I took a drink and swallowed down the wrong tube. And I have to say, like, so you swallow down the wrong tube sometimes and it's like not a big deal, but this was one of those times where it was like like I had to turn off the camera, press mute, and like hack up water all over my desk. It was so, and I was like really embarrassed. And anyway, so but the funny thing is, of course, the potential for there to be violence or turmoil or conflict and something to do with water. Over the weekend, my wife and I watched a movie together. We watched this movie called Greyhound, which is with Tom Hanks, and he plays like a commander in World War II of a fleet of ships going across the Atlantic with supplies, and there's these German U-boats that are coming after them. And I realized while we were watching it, I was like, this is real. First of all, I don't love war movies. Although Band of Brothers was a good show back in the day. I don't know if you guys remember that one, but I'm not like a big fan of like just being riddled with intense scenes of death and violence, but I do like Tom Hanks. And I had really liked Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, so we decided to watch this. Anyway, partway through, I realized this is all about violence and water. That's one thing, that Mercury's in a double-bodied water sign right now, so it can serve up. Like, I literally choked on water while giving a talk. That was such an interesting example. But there's been other examples of how Mercury can serve up from Pisces right now as it's squaring Mars, how it can serve up a dinner for Mars. For example, I want to mention just a few things from the news. There was, I don't know the whole story because, I haven't really looked at this carefully, but there was a massive crowd. I think it was like Miami Beach or someplace in Florida for spring break. And I mentioned how you guys might have heard me last week talking about how the need to get out will be so strong and overwhelming, but it could be like, you could kind of like bulldoze, or you have to be careful. I think I talked about Christmas and not like throwing your sister down the stairs on your way to the Christmas tree. And that's interesting because there's apparently like an overwhelmed beach area or something. Like, I haven't really read the story, so I don't know. But spring break, Mars is out there saying, let's have fun, let's be free. And interestingly, Mercury, in Mercury's temple, Mercury is was associated with markets, and also with games and court games and things like that. So just Mars in Gemini wants to have fun. That's one of the things that it wants to do, because it's a very youthful, playful sign. And Mercury is also the god of games, and sort of, it's not like Zeus, Jupiter merriment as in like Christmas or something like that. It has more of the feeling of like, I don't know, when you were in college. I mean, I went to a Christian school, so I didn't have a lot of fun. I was earlier, it's a different phase of my life. I had fun after college for a little bit, but people play card games where they take shots or something like this. This is Mars in Gemini. Mars in Gemini can like to, have fun in ways that are kind of tricky, maybe mischievous. So anyway, I'm just associating that energy right now with people at a beach in a water kind of scene, getting into a fair amount of trouble. I believe there were people that got like pepper spray, or the police came, or I don't know what the story is. So At any rate, here's another one. Mercury is the ruler of court games, basketball, hockey, things where the puck or the ball go back and forth, back and forth. Well, there was a lot of drama involving the NBA. So it's kind of my closet addiction, sports. So LeBron James, the famous basketball player, had a high ankle sprain. The reason that's significant is A, he's very rarely has been injured in his 17 or 18-year career, or whatever it is. And B, he was the front runner for the league's most valuable player this year, and likely was taken out of contention by virtue of the fact that he's now going to have to probably miss like a number of games or whatever because of this high ankle sprain. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but then the very next day, LaMelo Ball, who is the front runner for Rookie of the Year, fractured his wrist and is likely out for the season. So that energy of Mars and Gemini that wants to go out and do things and compete, and Mercury, remember, is in its fall in Pisces, and Mercury in its fall hitting the square to Mars will intensify that Mercury-Mars dynamic, because squares are also of the nature of Mars. Now, the one good thing about this is that when a planet like Mars is in Gemini and it has aspect to its host, to its ruler, that's considered a mitigating condition. There's a good talk that Chris Brennan does on his astrology podcast called Reception as a Mitigating Factor, and he's given that talk at conferences too. In ancient astrology, if a planet is in another god's temple or home and it has aspectual relationship to that god, that is considered to be a very good thing, where the planet can essentially give you, it can give you something that is good or helpful. Now, of course, on the other side, we have a debilitated Mercury right now in Pisces. So debilitated Mercury with reception, it could have been worse. It could be worse, or by the skin of the teeth, or almost like what do I want to say? A moment where Mercury and Mars serve up a little bit of mayhem, but it could have been worse. We also have Jupiter in an overcoming trine right now to Mars. That's mitigating a little bit. And we have reception between Mars and Mercury. So those things balance everything out a little bit. Another thing that happened, for example, was Olympic surfing hopeful Catherine Diaz, 22 years old, killed by lightning. So while training. So there's another example of, this time more tragic example, of a water accident from an athlete who actually died. There's the Mercury squaring Mars from a water sign in its fall. You know, that's the so you do have to be careful. Yesterday, my daughter, while at the playground, I would, on the scale of, like, she didn't have to go to the hospital, but on the scale of like ouchies that kids receive at the playground, this one was probably as close as it gets to needing to be seen without needing to be seen. It was a bad fall that she had. She's okay, but there you go. Another thing, we were having about once a week in our household, we try to have a dance party. So we just throw up a bunch of crazy songs and we have dance parties, and it's a really fun way. It's a really fun way to bond with the girls, and I really love it. And so we were having our dance party, and during the dance party, there was an outbreak of tears because the girls were having a hard time taking turns riding on my shoulders. And it was such a simple thing, but it was like, in terms of like, okay, we have dance parties. We're ninjas at navigating that kind of stuff, sisterly competition. And we know how to redirect so that it doesn't hijack the evening. No. This sucker hijacked the whole evening, because it just turned into a total shit show. So and that whole time I'm going, yeah, there it is. Another example, I showed my daughter a video over the weekend. I showed my daughter a video of my wife and our wedding. The videographer had made us this really sweet video, so I showed it to her, and she started asking me all of these questions about, why my father-in-law was walking my wife down the aisle. And I was like, well, daddies sometimes will give away their daughters. It's kind of symbolic, like you're going from, my shelter, my protection as your dad into the shelter and protection of your husband. And I know for some people, of course, that's not going to resonate, but I was kind of explaining that to her, that some people do that. And daddies sometimes like to walk their daughter down the aisle, and but mommies could too, and etc. So my daughter also had a complete meltdown, just complete, not like usual, like total meltdown, because she said, well, you're never going to give me away, are you? That was so sweet. It just killed me. So my daughter and I are sitting there crying on the bed, and I'm like trying to, she made me cry. And it's you have a Cancer dad, you're so anyway, so that was like all of these Mercury in a double-bodied water sign coming into a square with Mars. There was another high school football player that died in California during a game and collapsed and died. These are the kinds of things that you could hear about. I'm just picking examples that I think that they're just sort of cherry picking. The other one, of course, is there's violence at a spa. So you have right as Mercury is changing into that double-bodied water sign in its fall and starting to hit the square to Mars, you have multiple double-bodied signs, mean multiple shootings and death at spas, and directed toward Asian women in particular. So one of the things that can come up will be, this kind of senseless violence, or this almost like this mental emotional breakdown. And of course, there was controversy surrounding that. I pay very little attention to the news. So from what I read, there was controversy because this young person who committed these crimes said that he had a sex addiction, or he was from a Christian background. And I just noticed, some of the commentary and reflections that were around all of this. And of course, that's another expression of it. Joel Embiid, who was another person who was leading the MVP race in basketball, had a knee injury, took him out of the front runner injury, then put LeBron in the lead, then he gets an ankle injury. The feet also, be careful about potential stubbing of toes, or Mercury in a double-bodied sign can injure the feet in particular. Anyway, so these are the kinds of things that are in the air right now, and you could very easily see more of these kinds of things peaking in the next 3 to 4 days. I want to say that things like negotiations, working through the details of contracts, you might hit some snags. I do believe that this has, because there's reception with Mars squaring its host Mercury. Yeah, it's tense, but I really think that the worst manifestations, many of which will be sort of saved from them, because there's enough mitigating factors in the sky right now, specifically the fact that Jupiter's in a superior trine with Mars, that Mars has reception with Mercury, but still it's a tense aspect. And I would be especially careful about argumentation and debate, verbal, mental, emotional abuse or outbursts, complicated emotional states, and also maybe intolerance or impatience with complicated emotional states. So be nice to yourselves this week, because there's no need to, it's like, my wife said to me, my daughter was having all these big feelings, and, we were trying to explain it to her. And after our, we showed her the video from our wedding. And I was trying to, like, I think kind of typical guy thing, I was trying to offer solutions. Like, and I should know better at this point. I'm surrounded by girls. Like, I've got 2 girls. My dog is a girl, obviously my wife. So I should know at this point, don't offer solutions, just listen. But I can't help but put on my, like, know-it-all dude hat. Like, well, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? It's fine. You could just do this. So I was starting to do that with my daughter. And my wife was like, giving me this eyes like, and I was like, oh, like, sorry, I'm just trying. So lesson, though, is that we could all use that advice for ourselves. We might try to push ourselves through something that's difficult. And you might just need to, as we tell my daughter, just feel all of your big feelings. And that's okay. I would, again, just remember, everybody, that this week's Mercury-Mars dynamic is coming right as Mars is about to break the containment of the nodes, and as there is a cazimi happening between Venus and an exalted sun in Aries. Like, there is a drive to finish things that the cazimi of Venus and the sun represent. Mercury and Mars might provide a few snafus, a few temporary setbacks, but you'll get there. So have faith in that, and don't let your emotions, your words, or your thoughts get out of control because you trip down the stairs on the way to the Christmas tree. You know what I mean? That's what I'm telling myself this week anyway. So other manifestations of Mercury and Mars can also involve things like money or business or technology, and dealing with that kind of stuff. For example, I got my YouTube page started getting bombarded by people who were spamming over the weekend. Like, you know how it suddenly comes in a wave where you're all of a sudden you're like, okay, some dude named Carl in his basement somewhere is like trying to mess up my YouTube channel. Either that, they're probably at this point, they're probably just programs that people are running. But cybersecurity, cyber invasiveness, breaches of data, breaches of security or privacy with information. I would be careful of those things this week as well. But again, probably saved from the worst, or able to recover relatively quickly if something like that were to come up. I would not suggest this week, unless it's absolutely necessary, that you buy or sign up for some kind of new technology, at least until after Wednesday, because I don't know, it's one of those transits where it's like you're going to spill the glass of water all over your iPhone or whatever. So I would just be a little bit cautious of that. Don't take your phone, your tablet into the bathtub with you this week. I don't know if people do that. That sounds a little crazy to me, but be careful of that kind of stuff. All right. So was anybody born with Mercury in Pisces and Mars in Gemini? Tell us all about it. Do you swim in a sea of information? What is your life like? Tell us about it. Also, if you have Mercury Mars squares in your chart or an opposition or something like that, I'd love to hear from you guys. It's a very incisive, intellectual combination, a lot of executive mental powers that come with it. Really nice for people who want to be skilled at things like tech, coding, precision skills. I've seen people who are surgeons because they have to wield something like a knife with precision and intricacy. People who are wordsmiths, editors. You have a lot of interesting Mercury-Mars combinations as well. So tell me about it if you have that combination in your chart. And we will be back for more later this week. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.